So, as they say, without any further ado, let's get straight into this episode. So, Stephen, welcome. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Hi, thank you. Yeah, really nice to be on the show. I've been watching these for a while now, so thank you. But yeah, I'm Stephen. I'm the founder of the Care Social Network. So I started in care about 6.5 years ago now. Started off as a domiciliary care assistant full time in Huddersfield in West Yorkshire, near where I'm from, and I was working in the corporate world, finance, retail, marketing, and basically had zero satisfaction. And then I got to 30 years old and I was like, you know what? My family, my friends have always said you should become a care assistant. So I basically quit all that and jumped on Indeed and applied for a job. And lo and behold, I applied for the first job that I saw on Indeed, um, and became a domiciliary care assistant about 2 weeks later. Yeah, so it's been a really good journey. I then moved to become a HR manager for the same domiciliary care company, then HR manager and recruitment manager. Helped double the size of that company in 2 years. We got outstanding with CQC as well, which was amazing. And then, yeah, I realized I was enjoyed and was quite good at recruitment and retention. So started the Care Social Network, and here we are 3.5 years later. So yeah, that's a bit of a background, really.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Great. Well, let's get straight in, Stephen. So, how to completely eliminate use of agency staff for your care provider. So, why don't you give us the kind of circumstance, which I think everyone in the care sector will know the kind of scenarios uh, that they face. But let's
Yeah.
give the kind of scenario that someone, a care provider, might be facing that they may need help with.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I mean, a typical inquiry I get is, look, we're using agency. There's no continuity of care. It's becoming a big problem internally. The permanent staff aren't happy because the agency staff are getting paid more. It's costing us a fortune. We can't invest money back into the business. The training's all over the place. The managers are getting stressed. The rota's all over the place. So that's a typical example of what I get. I mean, I'm not anti-agency at all. I understand there's a need for it to be an emergency, but a lot of companies who come to me are reliant on agency. So I'll take a client I have now who I've had for 3 months. They're based in Lancashire, free care homes, and 60% agency 3 months ago. It's now 5% agency. It's saving them at least 10 to 12 grand per month. Um, and that is basically because I've come in and totally stripped back their entire recruitment processes and procedures. So step one is going in to physically see the care homes and doing what I call a health check, seeing what's happening behind the scenes. Why is there a need for agency? Are the internal staff trained? Do they know how to do recruitment? And by know how to do, I mean every single step. So posting a job, the right budget, the right job advert, the right ethos culture, then focusing on time to hire. So how quickly are you calling people when they apply for a role? And I make that a very strong point because typically care companies I go to are sending messages 3 or 4 days later on Indeed. Hi, you've applied for a job. When are you free for an interview? Very boring. Just not to the, just expecting candidates to get back to them. Why should a candidate reply to that? Do you know what I mean? It's a candidate's market out there at the moment, and candidates are applying for 5 to 10 jobs in one go. So typically, my biggest point and what I want people to take away from today is time to hire. You have to treat people with unbelievable respect, like gold dust, and get on the phone straight away. But then it's what happens after that. You've got to invite people in for interview, but you've got to actually make them want to come to the interview, because a lot of companies I speak to as well, and by a lot, I'm talking about hundreds a month, are getting no shows to interviews, which is becoming a big problem. And then what happens is they're tarnishing every care assistant with the same brush. Well, nobody shows up for interview. But when you dig deeper, it's typically because the processes have been wrong from the start. So that whoever picks up the phone to get somebody in for an interview has got to be a very, very good salesperson. They've got to talk about the company culture, the ethos, the beliefs, the hours, the shifts, why we're better than any other company. These are our testimonials. These are the meet the teams. Have you seen our social media pages? You can't have somebody doing that phone call who is just not motivated enough to do that call, because
mm,
if I'm receiving that call, I might say I'm attending, but really I'm just being polite, and that is typically what's happening. And
mm,
then from there, it's how the face-to-face interview, what actually happens at the face-to-face interview, what's being asked. Are people having a tour? Are people being introduced to managers? And how are you again persuading them to join you? I think candidates more and more now are interviewing us more than we're interviewing them, and rightly so. They should be doing that. It's potentially a role for life. They can pick where they want to work, so we need to be selling the service as much as possible. So this particular example of the care home, their phone interviews were an hour and a half. Their face-to-face interviews were 2 hours, and then they were offering a role 3 or 4 days after the interview. So it's completely wrong. All of that, everything I've just said there is completely wrong. A
mm,
phone screen is 10 to 15 minutes.
mm,
Face-to-face interview, I don't really put a time on it. It's however long it takes to persuade somebody to, get to work for you. But I'd say an hour to an hour 20, give or take. And offer management needs to happen on the spot. They were waiting 4 days, and I dig deep into this, and
mm,
I did an audit on they'd offered, say, 100 people a role. I think like 90% had been successful, but they'd already joined another company.
mm.
So, it's if you're
Sure.
not offering on the spot, that's painful. And the argument that people say to me is, yeah, but it looks desperate if you offer on the spot. That's not true at all. It's how you do it. It's how you offer somebody. I was a HR manager for a dom care company, and I would do whatever it took to make sure that person worked for me. I would do whatever. I said, look, have you got other interviews? Have you had any other offers? Yes, right. What have I got to do to get you to work for me? Because you're one of the best people I've ever interviewed. And
Mm,
do you know what I mean? Do whatever it takes to make that person feel amazing, but don't lie to them. Genuinely sell them the company culture and ethos. So, yeah, this particular client, this is just one of maybe 12 of my clients. 5% agency now, and it's purely to cover holidays and emergencies.
mm.
Um, say that they can now invest that back into training. They've hired an additional administrator for each home to help with compliance. So that's another, 25K per role invested back into the company because they're saving tens of thousands a month. So that's one example.
Yeah, really interesting to know. I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into all those individual elements. Before I do, this point about care in a recruitment crisis, we hear that the whole time, understood. And that
Yeah,
follows on from what you're saying, which is care workers can absolutely choose where they want to work.
yeah,
So, with that in mind, you were talking about you literally having to sell what you as a care provider to them.
yeah,
I'd like to know, because obviously, if you live in a certain area, you might have wonderful luxury care home at one end, maybe offer better rates,
yeah,
versus the smaller, maybe family run home, not as big, not as much income from self-funding private pay families. What difference have you seen, or what would you advise care providers listening on how to sell themselves within that
yeah,
climate when there are different
yeah.
providers, different
Of course, yeah. It's the key question, isn't it? Well, sure, a carer is going to pick the bigger companies or the ones with the reputation or the ones who pay more. But from my experience, half of my clients are typically individual locations or small, under 1,000 hours in dom care, or maybe just a small care home or supported living. So, but I also have clients, with 20 care homes as well. So, I think what it comes down to is the fact that carers, from my experience, are more interested in the people who work for these companies. So they're not necessarily choosing, I want to work for a big top 50 company. They want to see and hear you know what, who owns this care home? What's the backstory? Why did they start this business? What's their social media saying? Where's the testimonials and meet the teams? If care companies don't have positive and updated and relevant social media channels and websites, they're doomed from the start. So I make it very clear with any client I work with, you have to have updated social media channels. I did an audit 3 years ago and I asked 400 care assistants if they checked a company's social media page before an interview. 76% said yes. The rest said they checked after the interview. That's 100% of care staff checking a social media page at some point. So you have to be able to sell the company and the culture and the values. And, I, you know, don't worry about the competition. If you focus on your own company and the story and make your company very likable, then people will want to join you eventually.
Very, very interesting. Now let's get straight from the top about where to advertise, where Indeed, Facebook.
Yeah.
What do you recommend? What's your
Yeah. So I mean, so Facebook is great. More from my point of view, Facebook is more of a PR and a marketing tool. So getting the testimonials out there, to meet the teams. This is what we do. But you would 100% have to use Indeed to your advantage. Indeed is I have no affiliation with Indeed. I make this very clear on my LinkedIn posts all the time. Indeed is I can't believe we have Indeed to hire care assistants. It's just a golden ticket. It's so I don't want to say easy, but it's if you learn how to use Indeed and you master the job adverts, the algorithm, how to post jobs, when to post jobs, and how to use the job budget, then you can smash Indeed. Every single client of mine has increased by at least 500% their applications with the same budget, I might add.
mm.
So there's a bit of a misconception as well. Like, well, we used to post free jobs on Indeed, and it's not the same anymore. Well, of course,
But
it's
this
not the
is the
same.
question I had, because
Yeah,
often providers will tell me, oh yeah, indeed, the quality of applicants isn't good enough, just full of people, looking for the same people who are unemployed, looking for jobs. So, what you're saying is very interesting because it goes, it's the opposite. You're saying it's a golden ticket. So,
100%. Yeah.
so obviously it's about processes here
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, exactly. So a great example. Monday, client of mine, they're spending they need 4 care assistants a month roughly. They're spending £1,000 on Indeed. They're hiring one or two, but they have their job adverts on £5 daily. So this is like a pay-per-click daily budget.
uh,
And I asked them why, and they said, "Well, we've been doing that for the last 7-8 years.
mm,
You're basically competing against other care companies, aren't you? So
yeah, exactly.
yeah, you have to know how to use the Indeed algorithm, the budget, and get your job adverts um, user friendly as well. And I've mastered how to do that by listening to Indeed for the last 6 years.
Mm,
And there is tips and tricks and ways how to get your advert above everybody else. Because
yeah.
carers aren't typically looking on page 4, 5, and 6. They're looking at pages 1, 2, and 3. The argument here is people say, well, the
So
big boys, the top
are those tips and tricks, are they about the words you use in that ad, or is it
That's one of them, yeah, getting the benefits to the top of the advert for a
yeah,
start. So
yeah,
people are just I see a typical advert, "We're hiring, this is what we're looking for, this is what we demand, you need this, this, and this," and it's just like, well, who are you to demand these things from me? That the advert has to be very just to talk about how amazing your company is and the benefits of working for you.
mm,
People need to be sold, from a PR perspective or a marketing perspective, people
mm,
need almost clickbait in some cases, "Oh,
right,
great, these sound amazing. I'm gonna apply for these guys." The advert needs to be fixed by most care companies, and that is an easy fix as well. That's number 1, and number 2 is sorting out the budget and getting it on the right budget. You can do a free demographic on Indeed. I do that for clients, and it
mm,
tells you the average pay in your area, what job adverts work well, what don't
mhm,
work well, and people aren't using this. But you don't. I've only ever used Indeed for the last 6.5 years,
mm,
um, just because it's been an unbelievable success for me, and I've not
yeah,
needed to use any other platform. People use Total Read, Monster CV Library.
yeah,
I don't think you need to use them. I would be putting all my budget on Indeed.
yeah. All right, great, great. And So Indeed is a preferred platform for you. Great. And then you're going to get a lot of applicants, right, on Indeed? Is that correct?
Yeah, 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 absolutely.
About siphoning through them. Tell me about how you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
a client complained last week to me saying, "Stephen, we've got too many people applying." I was like, Are you congratulating me or are you complaining? Like, which one is it? Surely that's a good problem to have." Um, so you can ask key questions on Indeed as well. I don't know if you've ever used it, but you can
Yeah.
sift out people. So look, if you need an NVQ level 3, you have to have complex care experience. You have to have work authorization in the UK. You can ask all these questions. And then I set up templates on Indeed as well. So if people meet that criteria, you can send a quick email to them. Hi, whoever,
So
just
it's like
to
automated. Well, it's automated.
so
Is that right?
you would manually have to send the email
Right.
yourself, but
Okay. But you've
you can
already
also
you've got the email.
exactly.
Yes. They're already
Yeah, so
templated. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So you get 50 people applying, you could within 10 minutes
Bang,
you can
bang,
send them
bang.
all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly,
Get that. Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
That was interesting because I've used it Indeed for hiring a salesperson, and I mean, I'm
Great.
absolutely no expert on Indeed, but
Yeah,
I secured advice on how to do it
yeah.
best. So I'm personally familiar with that, and it actually saves you a whole lot of time. I don't
Do
know
you
how.
find that easier? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. That email which is templated, and then you slightly personalize it, and you have that power to
Yeah,
do that.
of course.
So, I don't. I mean, I genuinely don't know how many care providers use but that's really interesting to know. So continue on that about this process of filtering.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I mean, if you're inundated with applications, that's a great problem to have. I think it's just all hands to the deck as well. So I always send a thank you email to people straight away, and then I adopt what I call a vet principle. So voicemail, email, text. So
Right.
I'm calling candidates straight away. If they don't pick up, voicemail, bang, email,
Yeah,
text. Give them a reason to get back to you as well. Just say, look, really appreciate you applying for us. I see from your CV you look fantastic. I don't know if you've heard, but these are the benefits of working for us. This is the best number to get me on. So give them a reason, a call to action. I call it. People aren't if they see a missed call. A typical client says to me, "Yeah, we called them and nobody got back to us." Well, if I saw a missed call and I didn't know the number, I probably wouldn't call it back if there was no voicemail either.
yeah,
So yeah, I would adopt what I call vet principle twice. I would be doing that twice a day, um, because then you've covered all areas, then haven't you? If you're leaving a voicemail, email, and text twice,
yeah,
you've done everything you can for that
yeah,
particular.
yeah. And it's speed, you say, is key. 100%. I would allow that speed, like within one,
Yeah.
2, 3 hours. Correct?
Oh yeah. I say. I mean, to start with, I say 12 hours, and that's
Right.
some people
Okay. Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
a push. It's ultimately this comes down to internal processes, though. So it's
Got it. Yeah.
who's actually making these calls.
Yeah.
Typically, it's the registered manager or the deputy manager who, as we know, are doing a million and one other things. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
recruitment becomes like a lower priority role.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and that's not the registered manager's fault. It's just they need typically you have to get
Mm.
maybe an internal recruiter, an administrator, somebody who's good at doing this,
Mm.
or you can outsource it as well.
Yeah, I see. And but you're right. I mean, the speed is in essence. So, rather than days, it's hours. Uh,
Yeah,
and yeah, I guess it's all these things. It's like if you look at the numbers on reliance on agencies and the
yeah,
numbers we're talking about, a single care home, the numbers of
mhm,
of excess agency bills it's a huge amount.
yeah.
It
That becomes a
there's a big number one or two priority for care homes, care providers, right?
yeah,
And that's why thinking how best, if they are going to try and handle it in-house, if they are using the team they already have,
yeah.
how who is the best person to do that?
Well, it comes down to the individual. So I've met hundreds of registered managers who are excellent at recruitment, and hundreds who aren't. It's not their strong point, and nor should it be. You could argue,
Right.
I wouldn't say recruitment comes under the job title of an amazing registered manager. Typically that's not what they were
Mm,
hired to do.
mm,
Yeah, it is a responsibility, but as long as they're good with people, right, and
yeah.
they can work with the team, that's what's important. I've met hundreds of registered managers who are the absolute worst people to do recruitment just because it's not their bag and they're not good at
Yeah.
one to one and that's not what their strong points are. Um, and I've met average registered managers who are average at being a registered manager, but amazing at recruitment. I think it's a training issue in all honesty. That's why I tend to go into care homes or care companies and literally put it down in black and white. This is what you need to do. I've done it 1,000 times. It works. If you follow this step by step process, I promise you, you'll remove agency and you'll have less stress. You'll have more time to focus on the clients and be a registered manager. Um, but I would be tempted to hire somebody who is absolutely amazing with people to
Mm,
do your recruitment. Don't
mm,
have to have care background, potentially sales background, not
mm,
cheesy sales, but just somebody who's very good with people. A
mm,
typical care assistant is going to buy into whoever interviews them. If
mm,
that's a stressed out registered manager who hasn't got time to do recruitment and is rushing the interview,
mm.
care assistant is lost, and all the process and the time and the money is now faded away.
Yeah, yeah. And so you were doing the follow up, and that you are uh, contacting them fast. You're getting to the point where you're inviting them to come in. What do you say, to an interview, to a chat? How do you talk about
Yeah,
it?
you know what? Yeah, when I make phone calls, I say, look, I'd love to meet you face to face. Can we make that happen? Like, when are you free? This is another problem. So,
Yeah.
um, the client I was telling you about in Lancashire, they gave me interview because I was doing the phone calls for them for the first month just to get them going, and they gave me every other Friday between 12 and 4 for face-to-face interviews. And I just said to the owner, look, this is never going to work. You have to be given 2 or 3 days minimum for interviews. I'm not saying between 9 and 5, but 2 or 3 days, because how arrogant are we to think that a carer is going to be able to come in 2 weeks on Friday? We need to be bending over backwards for them and say, look, when are you free? We'll make availability for you. This phone call has gone really, really well. I can see you working for us. You're ticking all the boxes. You're exactly what we're looking for. When can you come in tomorrow? Great. I'm going to make time for you tomorrow. What time?
Mm,
And because then the candidate straight away, that sounds amazing. They've made time for me. I didn't realize I could get in that quick. And
mm,
what you've done there as well is you've got rid of all your competition, because I'm telling you now, whoever does say that is going to win straight away. They're going to be the ones
mm.
who hire the most staff.
And then the showing up to the interview or
Yeah,
chat to me. Talk to me about that, because I've seen 50-60%
no
non-showing,
sure.
which is
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah, yeah,
dreadful for everyone and
yeah,
thoroughly demoralizing. So what works here in trying to improve that?
yeah. Yeah, yeah. So it comes back down to the time to hire is one. So getting in touch with people quickly, asking the right questions on the phone. So do you mind me asking, have you got any other interviews lined up? Yes, one. I've got one in 2 days. Okay, well, can you come see us tomorrow or today? So then
Right.
what you're going to do, you're just eliminating the competition, but you also have to give people a reason to want to show up to the interview. So the
Mm,
culture, the company, the ethos, the founders, the meet the teams, the testimonials, and then it's a call to action after the phone call. You have to have a call to action. So as soon as I've got off the phone with a candidate, I'm sending them an email with what we've just discussed, getting rid of all the doubts that they have. So just to confirm, the hours we work are these. This is our pay. When you show up for interview, this is what's going to happen. So I have no problem guiding care assistants in what will happen at a face-to-face interview. I did a LinkedIn post about 6 months ago, and 80% of people said they were against this, which was interesting. There was about 300 people. it's worked for me every time. So I let care assistants know, look, for the first 10 minutes, we're gonna have a cup of tea and we're gonna have a chat, and I'm gonna show you around the care home. Next half an hour, we're gonna have some competency questions. It's gonna be based around these subjects. I'm not telling them the questions. I'm just giving them an idea of what the interview is going to be about. The next 10 minutes, you're going to meet one of the registered managers, and then potentially I'll give you another tour around. So I'm really selling it. So it's they know in that hour, they know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, 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 I see. And then, all right. And then do you check, what about like on the, do you do anything next in terms
So I send
of,
I send an email confirming a text as well, and then on the morning of the interview, I would repeat that as well.
right.
Um, but I would change the format of it. So I'd say, look, really looking forward to you today. You'll be meeting my manager,
Mm,
whoever.
mm,
She's excited to meet you. As a reminder, here's the links to our social media pages, because you're just creating a bit of excitement about the interview
yeah,
then. And
yeah.
that's 9 times out of 10 as well. I'll say, look, can you respond to this email just so we know you're definitely
Mm,
confirming?
mm,
And 9 times out of 10 people will respond. And if they can't attend, we can reschedule it. There's no problem. Things happen. You
mm,
know, like
mm.
things can change at the last minute. But I would always be following it up with an email and a text on the morning of the
Yeah,
interview.
I see, fabulous. Oh, maybe you can run through some of the like real life scenarios and results that using this system, uh,
Yep.
care providers can get.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the first ever example I have was when I was working for the domiciliary care company in
Mm,
Huddersfield. We went from 34 staff to 70 in 2 years, which was great. We got outstanding with CQC as well, so we didn't compromise on quality. So we had zero agency spend, but that was an example of scale.
mm,
Um,
mm,
Therefore, profit margins obviously increased.
mm,
And a good example I have is a client of mine on a 12-month contract who finished recently, 120 grand saved on agency
mm,
over 12 months by adopting these principles. The care home I mentioned in Lancashire, the last 3 months, 5% agency now from 60,
mm,
saving 10 grand a month. A domiciliary care company in Sussex was completely reliant on agency as well, and they've hired four team leaders. Sorry, four care assistants, two team leaders in the last 6 weeks
mm.
by increasing their Indeed budget and improving on their time to hire. So, I mean, those are some quick
Yeah,
examples.
yeah, and when we said from the very top, like for a care home, a single care home, their agency fees can be what, 100,000 plus, correct?
Oh, easily, yeah.
Yeah,
Because the thing is, as well, especially when they're having to recruit registered managers or nurses or
yeah,
senior staff agency, we're charging maybe 20%
yeah,
fee of a
exactly.
salary.
Yeah, yeah,
These are crazy fees, and the agencies as well know that companies are struggling, therefore obviously increasing their prices.
mm,
So that's obviously a
yeah.
worry.
And another thing I just want to talk to you about is managers, recruiting managers. So,
Mhm.
they are like a number one hire. Number
Yeah,
one, probably the most important hire, to be frank, for
yeah,
any single care home. Um, how can they best go about that?
yeah. I mean, I personally don't think you should ever have to use an agency to hire a registered manager. It comes down to knowing your demographic and the competition in the area, and get every registered manager I've ever hired, and there's been hundreds of them, has come through assisting internal teams how to use Indeed. Again, just putting a higher budget on it, and also using what's called CV search on Indeed. It's £250 for 100 credits, and you can literally headhunt people. £250,
I see.
and you're good. It will show you people in your demographic who are currently looking for a registered manager's job, and you can literally see their CV. You can't see their name, but you can see their CV, and then you can reach out to them and say, "Look, we're hiring. Can we have a confidential chat?" Um,
See.
Indeed, you hire a registered manager for £250, which you would, that's a steal.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that can be done by every care company.
Yeah, that's great, great, fabulous. So there's so many vital tips and insights here for care providers, and it's been great for you to share them with us, Stephen. Is there anything that we've not covered that you would like to cover?
Um, no, I mean the biggest thing I wanted to chat was time to hire, yeah, and the processes of the internal teams. So I think if companies, I think typically a CEO or owner of a care company, they don't usually know the processes because they've passed that on to a HR manager or register manager or whoever. To be, I think more owners should get to the bottom of what's actually happening, not as a witch hunt exercise, not to point the finger, but just say, look, let me know what's happening because we can change this and we can fix it
And it's
because
interesting, sorry to interject. I was speaking to a CEO of a good sized group, uh, and they are at the high ends, like luxury,
yeah,
really lovely care homes, around the UK, and like every care provider, they are facing issues of recruiting care workers.
yeah,
And again, it wasn't, there was a way of doing things that the HR team had. And I was talking about this with the CEO, and what he did, in fact, what she did, she decided, okay, things have got to change.
yeah,
And she kind of like ripped up the play, but not literally, but
no, no,
how it
yeah,
was done previously, and said, we're gonna have to look at this.
yeah,
And one of the things was actually about insisting on CVs. That I don't know what you think. It's like, we want to be speaking to them. We're hiring on attitudes, willingness to learn.
yeah.
CVs doesn't matter. Let's get
Ah,
on with
God, yeah.
it.
I love everything about that. I'm the biggest advocate of values based recruitment. I think the best care workers out there are still to work in care. I didn't know it. I was a manager at Lidl as a supermarket manager. Didn't like that role and had
Mm,
no fulfillment. Became a care assistant. I was quite a good care assistant. I really enjoyed it. And now I've started my own consultancy in recruitment and retention. So we have to spread the word out there to as many people as possible about how amazing this industry is,
mm,
because you can go so far with it as well, and you can people say, oh, the money's not there, but it's not always about the money, and you can get promoted and earn a good salary as well. So yeah, I'm glad you told me that, because values based recruitment, if you're not adopting that, you're going to struggle big time,
mm,
because you can't judge people by a piece of paper. I've
mm,
had people say, "Oh, that's a poor CV, no chance. That shows that they're lazy." Well, no, not really, because what if they're not good with technology and it's an old CV and they forgot?
mm,
We can't be judging people too early. So yeah, that's great to hear.
mm. All right, great. So finally, Stephen, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they best do that?
LinkedIn would be the best. Yeah, Stephen Forster, the Care Social Network. Um, Drop me a message on there. I'm uploading tips every day, anecdotes, videos, ideas, tips, and tricks. So
Yeah.
LinkedIn would be the best way. Yeah.
Right. Stephen, thank you so much for being on the Care Home PR
Thanks
Marketing
for asking
Podcast.
me. Very kind of you. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.